Hey, can y'all hear me? I'm just trying to make sure before we get it going. Can somebody give me a thumbs up on the mic? Mike, cool. Yeah, we got it all set up. I'm just waiting on Be Easy to come back. Yeah, to the thing, and we'll start it. I'm waiting on him. If you're just now coming in, man, hit the thumbs up. Share the live, like the live, man. This a long time coming. Been trying to get my bro on here, but I ain't gonna say too much until after I start the intro. So Be Easy. I got you in the back. Can you hear me now? Because I know you couldn't hear me at first. You can hear me now? Say that. Okay. Well, whenever you ready, just let me know. Uh, but I got the poll up. If you think Jesus Christ was a real person, yes or no, put a 1 in the chat for yes, 2 in the chat for no. Yeah. Okay. Uh, hit the thumbs up. Share the live. Sub to the channel. It's a big night in Black Atheism. I finally got my brother on here, but I'm gonna play the intro. We're gonna get it cracking. Let's do it. All right. All right. Let's do it.
We've got to give ourselves to this struggle until the end. Nothing would be more tragic than to stop at this point in Memphis.
Hold up. Hold up. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work, nigga. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Please let me work. Please. Please let me work. Let me work. He gonna get this work. He gonna get this work. Hold up. Let me work. Please. Please let me work.
Alrighty, we are ready to get it going. YouTube, what it do? It's your boy Black Atheist Rants. You know what's going on. You know what time it is. You read the title. I finally got my big bro on here. Yeah, man. So I've been rocking with Be Easy for a minute, man, and you know what I'm saying. He been going live, and he's been running the Jesus Never Existed. And man, Be Easy is a wealth of knowledge on like the historicity of Jesus and Paul and the Gospels, and I felt like what I'm saying. I need this to be seen by my YouTube family. You know what I'm saying. I think the Black atheist community, the Black community in general, needs to hear more of this. They need to know that this guy was not a real person. I think this is the first step towards mental freedom. You know what I'm saying? Education, liberation. You can't do nothing if you stuck on stupid. You stuck on mythology. You stuck on created creatures. You're stuck on superstition and folklore. You know what I'm saying? There's an issue when another group's mythology becomes your history. Now you think you Shem and Ham and Japheth and you are the descendant of Noah and David and these tribes of Israel. Historically incorrect. You think Jesus, Black people gotta wake up from this delusion of saying Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior. He died on a cross for your sins and all of this. It's time to wake up. You know what I'm saying? Okay. It's time to wake up. It's time to free yourselves. And I got a special guest, my big brother on here, Be Easy. I got his links to his TikTok in the description if you want to find his TikTok page. He does lives on this all the time. If you want to, you know what I'm saying, get up there and, you know, tune in and listen more. He does TikTok lives, but, you know, we're going to get it going without further ado, man. I'm about to bring my brother on the stage. Beezy, you ready? I'm finna bring you on the thing. You good? Okay. Let me see if I can do like this. Okay.
There we go.
Let me change the background so I can take the shit off. Put it still like that. Yeah. So wait, let me see if I can put it like that. I don't want it like that though. Yeah. I'll leave it like this until you start talking. Yeah, man. So like I said, y'all, this is my big brother, Be Easy, man. We've been rocking out. It's time to talk about Jesus never existing, man. And you know, I'm excited to have Be Easy on the channel. Man, Be Easy, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Man, what's good, bro? What's good, bro? Hey,
Gotta get the clouts. Gotta get the clouts for you.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah.
Bro, just before we get started, man, yo, hey, I love everything you got going and what you doing, bro. Man, this is so dope. This is so dope. And you know, like I'm a little older than you, and so you know, like
you know, I'm telling everybody I'm 54, man. You can't be saying it. But nah, go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Nah, but for real though, so cause you know, like now, cause the mindset I'm still in my kind of old you know, it's not old, it's not old school, but you know, earlier in the 2000s and stuff, the internet wasn't popping like it is now. It wasn't, you know, stuff. It wasn't, you know, easily accessible as it is now and stuff. And you know, so like me coming up, you know, like in my teens and 20s and stuff, you know, like in regards to this and things, you know, on a scholarship level, you know, like I was deep in the text, you know, and had to analyze, you know, different texts and stuff, you know, and wasn't able to, you know, pull up a lot of things on the internet and talk with a lot of different people and stuff like it's so easily accessible to now. And so like I'm still kind of in that mindset, and I'm kind of, you know, gradually coming out of it and doing more things online and stuff. But you're able to connect both just automatically, you know. So I love it. I love what you got going on. I'm trying to catch up.
I appreciate it, big bro. Well, man, listen, y'all. I done picked Be Easy brain for months and months and months and months. I've been asking him all these questions, and so we're gonna get it going. It's gonna flow naturally, man. Be Easy gonna do his thing. Get you a pen and a pad out and write some of this stuff down. Take notes. Listen to the information that's given. And like I said, make sure, like, if you need more understanding and you have like questions and stuff, Be Easy goes live on TikTok, and he does this, you know, time and time again. So, you know, he's a wealth of knowledge, and he's available. You know what I'm saying? When he goes live, you can get up there, ask a question if you need to. But with that being said, Be Easy, man. Let's do it. Let's get into it. I'm excited. I'm ready.
Yeah, bro. Man. Let's get into this.
I guess you just, you know, however you want to flow, however you want to go, man. Just start with, you know, I guess, you know, is there evidence for this Jesus Christ person? Do we have evidence for Jesus? I ask you that.
Man, that's a, you know, and like to first off, to just directly answer, you know, to directly answer that question first, you know, and then go into the monologue of it and stuff. No, we don't. You know, we don't have direct evidence for the existence of this person. You know, and it's mighty strange to me because, like, actually, like, the big thing that led me down this journey is when I was actually trying to, you know, when I was a huge believer in him, and I was, you know, and I was a Christian and stuff, and a friend of mine, you know, he's back then he was already he was like us, you know, and I wasn't yet. And he planted a seed. He was like, hey, you think you can you know validate the existence, like the literal existence of Jesus without using the Bible? And you know, I was like, bro, what? Absolutely, man. Why would I? Yeah, you know, and you know, he gave me some homework, and I went and started digging and stuff and trying to do it. And you know, like I'm not gonna lie, like one of on their journey, I came across a video of actually David Banner. You know, yeah, y'all heard it right. The rapper David Banner. That bro, David Banner is so smart, so intellectual, and you know, he pro us, pro black, pro everything, however you want to call it. And like he was talking about this stuff. And he actually introduced me to one of our, you know, black master teachers, and he's still alive. His name is Anthony Browder. I have like 4 of his books and stuff. And one of his books called, actually it's right here. This one that I'm referring to. This book right here that's called 22 Essays on the African American Experience. You know, but when I looked him up and stuff, and you know, I started listening to some of his videos and stuff, some of him, you know, speaking on it and stuff, and then that you know, and again, he introduced me to more, you know, more. I was only concerned with black scholars first, you know. He introduced me to more black scholars, like master teachers and stuff, you know, and I started, you know, ordering their books and stuff, listening to their lectures and things of that nature and stuff on this topic first, you know, and just when I started to piece things together, and when I started to find out that a lot of the stuff that we've been taught, you know, it's just been lies purposely, you know, and it's like it starts to consume you, like all your leisure time and stuff. You know, I know me, and he actually writes about this in his book. Any leisure time I had, hey, actually, a lot of the time that I was supposed to be working and doing other stuff. I still be doing that now. You know, boy, I be at work and we be, hey, on, you know, on TikTok and stuff. Yeah, say, I be and like, cause it just engulfs you. And it's like, yeah, that's like everything I was doing and stuff. Man, I wasn't going out like, man, I wasn't, you know, doing the stuff that normal 20-year-olds do and stuff. Hey, I was, because it was so interesting to me and fascinating. And it's just like, man, once I found out about one lie, you know, like I had to keep going and find out about other lies and stuff. So to make a long story short, like once I piece things together and stuff, because like there's no, like there's multiple people that, you know, existed and wrote about, you know, the region in the 1st century. And none of them wrote about or mentioned this figure, this Jesus of Nazareth, or anything from the New Testament at all. Like you don't hear mentions of any of them until the mid-2nd century and beyond. And that was a huge red flag for me, because I was like, dang, surely, hey, if Jesus, you know, our Lord and Savior was walking around, you know, walking on water, healing people, you know, if, you know, like the Gospel of Matthew claims that due to the resurrection, like people got up out of the graves and started walking around and interacting with people. It literally says that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, surely somebody gonna, you know, gonna mention this. But there's no mention from anyone, you know, about this figure. And like, and I talk about this guy often on my on you know, on the lives on TikTok. Like there's a man, his name was Philo of Alexandria. You know, I know Bar is all familiar with this guy, you know, from, you know, hearing me talk about him and then him going and doing his own, you know, conducting his own research about him and stuff. And that's what I do often. I like to give people the names, the book names, the dates and stuff, so that they can go and check this out too and validate it, just like he does. So there was a man, his name was Philo of Alexandria. All right. He was a Jew. He was a philosopher and a historian. He wrote a lot of books and works and stuff. But specifically, he has one book that's called On the Embassy to Gaius. All right. Philo of Alexandria was born in 25 BCE and he died in 50 CE. So he was born before the supposed Jesus and he died after the supposed Jesus. Now, Philo of Alexandria, he traveled to Jerusalem in the region often, and he actually lived there a little bit. And as a Jew, in chapter 2 of that book, he specifically dedicates that chapter to documenting the cruel things that Pontius Pilate was doing to the Jews of the region, because he never wanted it to be forgotten. He wanted it to be notated. And one of my hugest red flags is that with that chapter of that book, and the specific purpose of it is to document the cruel things that Pontius Pilate was doing to the Jews. And according to the story, Jesus was a Jew. And hey, this was the most cruel thing that Pontius Pilate did to the most important Jew. And like, I find it very alarming that there was no mention of this figure or the crucifixion or any of these things that the New Testament claims, not only in chapter 2 of that book, but in none of his writings. And so, stuff like that, was a huge red flag that, that make you go, and then make you start digging deeper. So no, there's no evidence for the exist. Like, all of the evidence points to the creation of this character. Like, there's numerous, as I know Barno and some people who are listening to this probably already know, but if you don't know, like, most of the quote unquote the supernatural things that the character of Jesus does in the book, matches a lot of the supernatural things that other mythological deities did who were created before the character of Jesus. So right there, right there, that shows you something. And there's numerous things that's called anachronisms within the text. So anachronisms are like when characters in a text says certain words or goes to certain places that would be impossible because they didn't exist yet. So kind of like if I wrote a text about MLK, and I said that, hey, MLK pulled up on Coretta in his Challenger, and he texted her, he said, hey, get ready, we about to pull up to the club, we popping bottles all night, it's a movie. So obviously you know that, hey, in the 50s and the 60s, Challengers wasn't in existence yet, iPhones weren't in existence yet, and stuff. So obviously you would know that that's BS. So that's what an anachronism is. So, and it's a lot of them that Jesus did and stuff. Like one of my favorite ones that I know Bar is aware of, we talk about often, like in Matthew, when Jesus was going to synagogues and he told his disciples not to allow people to call them rabbis and things of this nature. Like, this is supposedly in the 20s and 30s, but according to the Jewish Mishnah, the first rabbi was Yohanan ben Zakkai in 70 after the destruction of the Second Temple. So how can Jesus be telling his disciples not to allow people to call them rabbis when the term didn't exist yet until 70? So it's a lot of things like that we're going to get more into, in the show that makes you raise your eyeball. I mean, not your eyebrow and question.
Like this right here. He said eyeball.
Yeah.
So, man, that was good. I'm glad you just flowed right there. I guess we can modulate to most people who look into Jesus Christ. They Google it. They go to their favorite biblical scholar or whatever, and you already know the big two, Tacitus and Josephus. These are everybody's bread and butter when it comes to the existence of Jesus. They're going to bring up Josephus and Tacitus, and whichever one you want to do first is cool. But dive into those two for the people.
Yeah, we could just do them in chronological order.
Okay, cool.
Because Josephus was born first. He was born in 37. Tacitus was born in 57, and his text came out first. And so yeah, that's the big two. And most people don't know about this because most people don't look into it. And just when they just type in that question into Jesus in a Google,
right.
Non-Christians who mentions Jesus and stuff. That's the two that comes up and stuff. And so first off, before we just dive into the text of Josephus, people don't stop to critically think about things. So you mean to tell me in the entire first century, like a full century is a long time. In the entire first century, out of the millions or billions of people or whatever who existed, and out of all the people who existed over there and wrote about the region and stuff and everywhere else, only one person supposedly mentioned this character. Like that should make you, that again, that should make you raise that eyebrow and scratch that head. But again, most people don't think about that. So I mean, come on now. So back then, the crafters of this story, like earlier on in the 2nd and 3rd century and stuff, they weren't. And again, I didn't say first because it wasn't created yet in the first. In the 2nd and 3rd century and stuff, when they were crafting this story, all of these church fathers and stuff and others, like they weren't. They intended it for a small group of people in a specific audience. They never knew that all of this stuff was going to blow up like it has now, and was going to spread like this and stuff. Like that it blowing up and stuff, that was due to the work of the Romans. Later on, starting in the 4th century with Constantine and stuff, and we're gonna get into that. So, but with Josephus, okay, so like when they pull up Josephus, they're referring to. So he wrote a lot of things, but specifically one book he wrote called The Antiquities of the Jews, and that book comes out in 93. And the purpose of that book was to write about different events around the region that happened to different Jewish sects and Greek people as Romans and Greek people as well, because they spoke Greek. So in this book, in Antiquities of the Jews, section 3, chapter 3, all right, so it's a quote that is referred to as the Testimonium Flavianum. The quote is given that nickname because it's talked about so much, right? So that's the quote that says, supposedly Josephus writes that there was this guy named Jesus who, if it be lawful, he didn't say guy, he said there was a man named Jesus, if it be lawful to call him a man at all. So he's indirectly alluding to him being a god. And then he goes on to say, that, hey, he did these wonderful, wise things, and then he was crucified and he rose, on the 3rd day and stuff. And, because of that, he was preaching these wonderful things, and he started to develop a following of the Christians, and he said that he's the Messiah, the anointed one. He's the Christ, So that's the quote that's called the Testimonium Flavianum that Google brings up, that people thinks that Josephus said that. Now, the thing about this is that Josephus didn't say that. Josephus didn't write that at all. That quote was written by a man in the 4th century. So over 200 years after Josephus, there's a guy by the name of Eusebius. He's known as the quote unquote the father of church history. And the reason for that is because, like before the first council of Nicaea that happened in 325 CE, the Roman Emperor Constantine, he already knew what he was about to do. And so he started prepping for it. And he hired this guy by the name of Eusebius to create a fake history of the religion and of the church, because he already knew that he was about to start colonizing other lands and about to start spreading this religion for control, more control over the empire. So he wanted everybody to be on one accord, and so that he can have a more strengthening grasp on everyone. And with all these different religions and pagan following and stuff, like you can't control all these different people with different beliefs and stuff.
Right.
And so these new converts who were about to be introduced to the religion that they were about to be forced to believe in, he wanted them to have a history of it. So the thing about Eusebius is that he's an admitted liar pretty much. Now, he wrote a lot of books and stuff, but specifically in two of them. One is called Ecclesiastical History, and the other one is called Purposes of the Gospels, Demonstrio Evangelicum. Specifically in that one, you can go to book 2, chapter 31, where he writes that that it's a virtue to lie and spread falsehoods if it's for the advancement of the church. He literally wrote that he doesn't think it's a sin to lie, again, if it's for the advancement of the church. Again, this is in book 2, chapter 31 of Purposes of the Gospels, Demonstrium Evangelicum. And if you want, you can just go to Internet Archives and pull up the PDF version of that book and go to it and see. I want you to verify this stuff. I'm talking, not you, Bar. I'm talking to, people who are going to watch this. Now, already, so you got this guy named Eusebius in the 4th century who Constantine hired to create a history of the church. And he started doing that. He started to create a fake history of the church, altering documents, creating certain figures, church fathers, giving fake dates and stuff for certain people. So now, right after Eusebius writes in that same chapter about him, it's beneficial to spread falsehoods if it's for the benefit of the church. He literally said, now let us make use of Josephus the Jew. And that's where he goes on. He writes that quote. He says, now Josephus the Jew in Antiquities of the Jews, book 18, wrote that. And then he went on to write the Testimonium Flavianum, that quote. Now, this is in the 4th century. Now, according to my research, this was the first time that anyone had ever heard of or seen this specific passage in Josephus's writings. Now, that's a red flag, because it was multiple church fathers who lived after Josephus and before Eusebius in the 2nd and 3rd century who were very familiar with Josephus's works and reference his works often. And none of them referenced that quote as Christian church fathers. It would have been the most important thing in his works to reference, and they didn't. And again, if I'm monologuing too much, Bar, you want to jump in with
No, this is good. This is what the people need.
Yeah, so and specifically it is, it's one church father by the name of Origen of Caesarea. And Origen, he was also the first one who was born into the religion. And also we're gonna get into that later. That's a red flag thing too. But like Origen, he was a Christian plus. He was apologetic. Like I say, he was a Christian plus and stuff. He was so much of a Christian and so much of a, Jesus follower and stuff that he actually castrated himself for Jesus. Like y'all look this stuff up. Like hey, he cut off his jump so that he, so that he could walk more purposeful, under the tutelage of Jesus, and it not causing him to sin and all of this stuff.
Couldn't be me.
So yeah, he did. Y'all can look this stuff up. So back then, it was people like us who existed back then, and they were non-believers. But the thing about it back then, it wasn't common, and it was frowned upon, and you can get in trouble and stuff too, for just coming out and saying like, hey, this stuff is BS. This ain't real. So instead of them just saying that stuff is BS, they would mock it, make jokes about it, write satire. And there was a guy by the name of Celsius back then who did just that in the 3rd century. He was mocking it. He mocked Jesus. And again, this is the 3rd century, not 1st. So by this time, the character was already created and stuff. And some of the scriptures and stuff had already been created and were in rotation and stuff. And they were continuing to edit things and stuff. But, he was mocking Jesus, said that, he was a sorcerer. He, he performed black magic, and, he questioned his authority and all of these things and stuff, and in Origin wrote a response to Celsius. It's called Corpus Celsius. And in Origen's response, Origen brings up Josephus. And Origen specifically says that Josephus didn't believe in Jesus and didn't believe Jesus was the Messiah and the anointed one and all of those things, which Origen is correct. And this was in the 3rd century. And so now Eusebius, who writes in the early 4th century, and again, he was hired by Constantine, who was the Roman emperor. So he had access to all of the, the previous documents and stuff about this stuff. Now, Josephus had access to Origen's writings and stuff, and Origen wrote a lot. So Eusebius crafted this story, the Testimonium Flavianum, and inserted it in there. Because if it was in there already, because the quote says Josephus supposedly calls Jesus the Christ and the Messiah. And if that was in there already, then Origen wouldn't have said what he said. You see what I'm saying? Right. So we know that Josephus was a Jew. And just according to Jewish culture today, Jews today, they're still waiting on their Messiah.
Right.
Yeah. So if the Jews today are still waiting on their Messiah, that means the Jews back then in the 1st century were also still waiting on their Messiah. That's why the Jews today are still waiting on. So if the Jews back then were still waiting on their Messiah, Josephus being a Jew, he wouldn't have wrote that Jesus was the Messiah if he's still waiting on the Messiah. You see what I'm saying? And like, again, according to Christian tradition, not actual history, but according to Christian church tradition, Christians were being persecuted in the 90s of the 1st century, because they say that they were being persecuted during the reign of Domitian Flavian, and he reigned in the 90s. So now Josephus, he was a Jew, but he was a Jewish trader. Like he worked with the Romans and stuff, and he had favor with the Flavian dynasty, and he lived in the Caesar's palace. So if the Christians were being persecuted during the 90s, during the reign of Domitian, and remember what I said at the beginning when, he said if it'd be lawful to call him a man, he pretty much calling him a god and stuff.
Right.
If Josephus would have wrote that living in the Caesar's palace in the 90s, it would have been off with his head, and he knew that. So come on now. So we got to put 2 and 2 together. So no, as a Jew, Josephus would never, and no Jew would ever call another man God, ever. And Jews are still waiting on their Messiah. That's why the Jews today, back then and today, don't believe in Jesus. You got some of them that believe in Jesus, some of them that believe that he could have been just a guy, but just not the Messiah, So Josephus would have never wrote those two things, you know. And it's a lot more things that shows that Josephus didn't write the passage that I'm about to still get into. But you know, I just wanted to pause. I don't know how this go. If you had
no, because we
wanted to get
this is right, because that's what I wanted you to do, a deep dive on the testimonium, the James, the Tacitus, because this is when everyday layman people who don't read all of this literature, when they go to look this stuff up, the AI, the search engine, everybody's gonna throw Josephus and Tacitus in their faces. So Black people need to understand that these are not evidence of Jesus. So
yeah.
if y'all are paying attention and y'all are following along, there are some major red flags with the testimonium Flavianum. Josephus would not have called Jesus the Christ. Origen, which was another church father who's quoting Josephus, did not mention the testimony of Flavianum. And then we have Eusebius in his works saying he doesn't think it's okay to lie for the advancement of the church. And right after saying that, he quotes the testimony for the very first time in history. You got to put all this together. And like what Beezy's saying, you got to put two and two together and think for yourself. This is the telltale sign. And Christians have a long history of forgeries, interpolations, pseudo history, pseudonyms, a pseudopigrapher. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then look, let me just turn my fan on right here because it's a little hot in the room. Hold up.
Yeah, I got mine on too. I got mine on too. But yeah, man, y'all make sure y'all hitting the like button. We gotta be easy on. We gonna keep it going. Let's get back into it. So with testimony of Flavianum, we back. We back. Let's go.
Yeah, and a lot of things. So there's many other red flags that shows this is not native to Josephus. Like for one, the text is placed. The placement where it's placed in Josephus's book, it's out of place. It's placed somewhere where it doesn't belong. So that would be like, you know, and this is going to apply to the Tacitus as well once we get into him. But like they'll be like when you write an essay on something, like, you know, your essay is going to flow. Like each paragraph might be talking about something different, you know, for that paragraph, but it all is going to be you know,
cohesive,
relating to the overall title of your essay.
Right.
Now, in, you know, the Testimonium Flavianum is book 3, section 3, chapter 3. So now the chapters are, you know, chapters are book 2 and book 4. So the book that's before it and the book that's after it, they flow together. So the book that's before it, Josephus was talking about, you know, how Pontius Pilate went, because Pontius Pilate was a real person, you know. And, you know, that's not uncommon. You know, authors of fictional texts often will use, you know, real people or real settings, you know, in their fictional texts, you know, to advance it or whatever. That doesn't, you know, like, for example, Bart Simpson met Trump. You know, we know that Trump is a real person,
right?
But nobody out here thinking that, hey, there's a real yellow family living in Springfield, you know, that's running around here. Like, no, you know, like Spider-Man swung from buildings in New York City. You know, we know New York City is a real place, Manhattan and Queens and stuff. He was in all of the boroughs and stuff. But we know that there's not a real teenage boy slinging web and swinging from building to building. You know, so yeah, Pontius Pilate was a real person. We have contemporaries who interacted with him and wrote about him. We have the Pilate Stone that details his, you know, his job title and his name and stuff, that archaeologists date back to his exact time of existence and stuff and so on. So yeah, he was a real person. But in book 2, Josephus writes about how Pontius Pilate went into Jerusalem and he wanted to increase the water supply, and he used the sacred money of the Jews of the region to do that, and they didn't agree, and they started rebelling, and he sent in more Roman soldiers with knives to you know, do to people what knives do,
right?
You know, and then, you know, the book 4 literally starts off by saying another sad calamity. So another sad thing that happened to the Jews was. So you got books, you got the entire section that's literally talking about sad things that happened to the Jews. And then right in the middle of those two, you got a paragraph that's starting off with, oh, there was a wonderful wise man by the name of Jesus, if it be lawful to call him a man at all. Like, he's not talking about good things at all, Josephus. So, like, what? Come on now. You're not gonna have a paragraph that starts off like that and stuff, and it ends off good as well. And then the next paragraph says another sad thing that happened to the Jews was, like, that's mighty odd, and the Testimonium Flavianum is only like 3 or 4 sentences. Like, that's not the way that Josephus wrote at all. Josephus wrote, he in everything, he always used extravagant details. He never left anything to the reader's imagination. You never had to infer anything. Like, he laid it out. All right. So, like, like book 4, the one after the Testimonium Flavianum, he's literally talking about a Jewish man that that wanted to get with this lady, and she refused his advances and stuff. And so is another man, his homeboy, that went up to him and came up with a plan of how he can get with her and tell her that, hey, tell her to come to the temple of Anubis and tell her that Anubis want to speak with her and stuff. And he did that. And she went to the temple of Anubis at nighttime, and from behind, the man came from behind and pretended like he was Anubis and had sex with her and stuff. And and she realized what was happening afterward. And then the next day, both were dealt with. The woman was, she was dealt with more harshly, I don't know how or why, but like, this is the type of stuff that Josephus wrote, and the way that he wrote, like, you didn't have to infer anything. So, like, you got these 3 or 4 sentences about Jesus only, and it's like, huh? Like, Josephus never wrote like that, and it's using verbiage and using words and stuff that there were more modern from Josephus's time. Josephus never used verbiage and stuff like that. So, no, Josephus never wrote about Jesus. That is what we call an interpolation, a Christian interpolation. So Eusebius wrote the Testimonium Flavianum and inserted it into Josephus's writings to validate the narrative that they were trying to portray. And back then, doing things like that was kind of easy because, again, like, they didn't have the printing press. It wasn't invented yet back then. So, when they wanted to make copies of documents, they had to handwrite everything. That's why there's so many manuscripts. And again, most of those manuscripts don't come until the 9th and 10th century. But when they wanted to make copies of something, they had to handwrite it. So if you're handwriting a document and you want to add your little 1-2 into there, you can. And then if someone else comes behind you some years later, and if they see your document and they want to make a copy of your document, they're going to handwrite your document, and now they're going to handwrite everything that you wrote in there, including the extra stuff that you put in there. And then if somebody else comes along the line a few years later and handwrites that document, and so on and so on. So it was very easy for them to do stuff like that because they didn't have text messages, emails, copy machines, all that to, so they had to handwrite stuff. So no, Josephus didn't write that document, the Testimonium Flavianum.
So, man, that was good. I hope everybody's following along and taking notes. That was about the Testimonium Flavianum. I want you to speak on the other popular reference to they're claiming it's about Jesus the Christ out of the Gospels. And so, why don't you spend a little time talking about the James reference in Josephus's writings?
Oh, Yeah, with the James reference, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's an easy one as well. And real quick, in the Josephus one, I was trying to let me see, I was trying to get his name. Let me see, where's him? Where's his name right here? Let me see, where's it? Yeah, there's there is a book by the name by yeah, here he is, by Lewis H. Fieldman. Um, and I was pulling up because I used to have this book, but I don't know where it is now. I had it for a long time, and I moved a few times since then. And you know how stuff get lost and stuff. I'm gonna order another one. I just haven't yet. But there's a book by Lewis H. Fieldman called Josephus in Modern Scholarship, where he extensively goes through this stuff and he lays everything out to show you how this was, not native to Josephus. That quote, the Testimonium Flavianum. And again, the author's name is Lewis Fieldman. And he's a scholar. And he's white, a white scholar. And sometimes, especially when you're dealing with us, hey,
Yeah.
we got to keep it a bean. Sometimes,
Yeah, that's
like
facts. Talk
a
to
lot
him.
of us, our mind is so colonized and stuff. We think white ice is colder.
They
So,
ain't gonna believe it till they say it.
Yeah, exactly.
Bart Ehrman got to say Jesus wasn't real. But yeah.
Yeah. So
Facts.
and the other like Josephus wrote about like 17 different Jesuses and stuff, and every single time he told you exactly who they were, because there was a common name. There was other people with that name and stuff, like Yeshua.
I don't think people a lot of people don't know that though.
Yeah,
but yeah. So you said he wrote about 17 other Jesuses.
Yeah. And every single time he told you exactly who they were. Remember earlier I said, hey, Josephus never left anything for the reader to infer. Every single time he told you exactly who they were. And so like back then, most people didn't have last names like we have. So, it would be blank of, and usually it was where they're from. So, I'm from Houston. I'm in Houston. So back then I would have been Be Easy of Houston. It would have been Bar of Memphis.
Right.
And stuff like that. So yeah, so every single time Josephus told you exactly who he was talking about. And it was no different in this book right here. If you just, this is in book 20. And if you just go to the last sentence of that passage, he tells you exactly who he's talking about. He tells you after the Sanhedrin unalived James, then Jesus, the son of Damnius, took over as high priest. The whole passage is referring to an event that happened in the 60s of the first century. When Festus died, and then Agrippa took over as the procurator, and traveled down and formed the Sanhedrin and stuff. And then James, he was accused of some crimes and stuff, some falsehoods and stuff. And then that sentence where it says James, the brother James, who was the brother of James, who was called the Christ, who was the brother of Jesus. Now, the thing about that is that little part right there with the brother of Jesus, who was called the Christ, that also is not native to Josephus. He didn't put that in there. There were multiple people in the 2nd century who referred to that passage, because in that passage, like Josephus wrote how the unaliving of James, as James was the high priest, and the Greeks, Josephus wrote in Greek, and the Greeks referred to their high priest as the anointed, which in our terminology, Christ means the anointed one. Christ comes from the Greek word Christos, which means the anointed one, and that's what they call their high priest. That's why in the Septuagint, you know, the Old Testament, the Greek Old Testament that comes out in BCE times. They use the word over 30 something time in there to refer to the Greek high priests, you know, but that little passage like was discussed in the 2nd century, and no one referred to that passage at all. Yet it comes about now. Eusebius was the one who discovered the Testimonium Flavianum and put it in purposes of the Gospels, and he's also the one who discovered the James, who was called the Christ, who was the brother of Jesus. He's the one who discovered that as well in ecclesiastical history. You know,
I didn't know that. I didn't know that he discovered both. I didn't know that about the James reference. So that's glaring.
Yeah. He wrote that Origin. He wrote that Origin discovered that James, you know, was the brother of Jesus. There's nowhere in any of Origin's writings, you know, so far that, you know, I haven't come across that. But Eusebius wrote that Origin discovered that, and so Eusebius included that little part of the sentence into Josephus's writings at all. I mean, also.
Right.
But again, just if you go to the end of that passage, Josephus tells you who he's talking about. Jesus, the son of Damius. So now, Josephus never wrote about Jesus, never knew of any Jesus of Nazareth character. That's why Josephus never mentioned anything that the New Testament claims are right about. Never mention any of the characters in the New Testament or anything, because it wasn't in existence yet. It wasn't created yet. And that's another thing. Like in the Gospels, the crucifixion is only talked about in the Gospels, and the Gospels weren't in rotation yet. So how would Josephus be aware of the crucifixion and him raising from the dead and stuff if the Gospels weren't out yet?
We gonna. I know you got some interesting stuff to cover on that. But before we get to the Gospels, and because I want you know Paul and the Gospels, we covered Josephus. Now on to the other one that everybody, for some reason, the Christians can never pronounce his goddamn name right. Your boy Tacitus, man. Talk to us about Tacitus. They love some Tacitus.
Man, they love some
tactician, Tacitus. They call him everything but his name.
Taxi, one dude called him Taxi. And,
talk to us about Tacitus.
And immediately off the rip, when people come up and bring those up and they mispronounce their names, Josephus and Tacitus, off the rip, that immediately lets us know that they don't know what they're talking about.
You just looked this up today.
That you just
now.
And like Tacitus was born in 57. And now I don't know how to share my screen on here. This is my first time doing the StreamYard stuff. I'm not even gonna try and mess some stuff up. So
it says do you see where it says present or invite? Do you see that? It should be at the bottom. It's like a screen with a plus in the middle of it. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah,
you can present it and I can share it, but you can't share it. So whatever, if you can find it at the bottom and you press that and you click the whatever tab you want to share, and then once you're ready, I can put it on the screen.
Oh, okay. Well, let me pull up the document right quick.
Because I know, that this document is, I know what you're about to pull up. This is is vital and important when we're speaking on Tacitus.
Yeah, it is. Because if we didn't have this document, then we would be having a separate conversation.
It'd be rough, yeah.
It'd be so okay. So
but they slipped up.
Yeah, they did. So let me go back to the stream.
Yeah, if you come back to the stream, there's a at the bottom of your screen, there's a square with a plus in it, and then you can share your tab.
Let me. Oh, there we go. Okay.
And if you see where it says present or invite, I don't know if you see that part. That'd probably be only on mine, but at the bottom of yours, it should say some with a present or a plus.
I see that in the share screen.
Yeah. Right. And when you share it, I can put it up here.
Wait. Should I click allow to share the window or allow to share the screen?
Just the window. I don't need the whole screen. I just need the window. Yeah. Okay. Because now you're sharing the stream screen. Just share the window of just the window you want to share. Just put just the window.
Allow to share window. Okay. And then there you go. Did it close or something? So yeah, share this window. Okay. So you got it.
That's it. That's it. Whenever you're ready for me to bring it up on the screen, I can bring it up because I see it now.
Yeah, so you can bring it up on the screen.
Now I made a few. See, yeah, that's what I want. Yeah. Let me try the other one. How that one look? No, we don't want to be on the paper. We're gonna do the other one like I just had it, like that. Or is it this one? No, we'll do this one right here. Okay. Yeah. So can you see that? You see how that look?
Oh, hold on. Let me go back to it. Oh, yeah. I see.
Can you see it on the stream?
Yeah, I see it on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, but it took me off of my screen from scrolling on it and stuff. But we can just keep that still image right there. So
and if you go over to the tab and whatever you do on the tab, you won't be able to see the stream while you're scrolling on the tab, but we'll be able to see what you're doing on the screen. So you don't need to see us. You don't need to see what's happening on the screen. Whatever you're doing, we're going to see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So like, well, I'm gonna just leave it like this. I don't want to mess anything up. So, like, right here, this is a copy of Annals, book 15. You know, and Tacitus, he wrote a lot, but specifically referencing one of his books that he wrote called Annals. And in book 15, with that's what people bring up to in reference to this with the Jesus stuff. So now again, no one has the original document of Annals from Tacitus.
Yeah.
The oldest manuscript that anyone has dates back to the 11th century, and it was and still is held by the church. So the Catholic Church. So you see there's motive there. And this is a copy of the oldest manuscript that's held by the Catholic Church. And just right there on this still image, you can see all of the edits that they were making to it. Them crossing out words, adding new words at the top of other words, them erasing letters and changing around some letters and stuff, providing commentary on the side and stuff. So clearly we know that they were editing documents. They weren't honest and just start handwriting documents correctly as they were. Now, and again, and because it's a church, we know that there's bias there. So with that being said, let me stop my screen now so I can go back to normal. With that being said, with us knowing that they were editing documents and stuff, and again, that was the oldest document that they have that dates back to the 11th century. That was the oldest manuscript that anyone has. So now, first off, again, to go back to that go back to that reference of the essay, like you wouldn't place something that in the essay that didn't belong. In Annals, book 15, the entire section, he's referencing the fire in Rome that happened in the 60s, and who Nero blamed, and the consequences that happen to them and things of that nature. So right in the middle of that passage, you have a sentence that Christians like to use that says Christus suffered the most extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of our procurator Pontius Pilate. Now, there's huge red flags there. Now, again, remember, we know that they were editing documents. So now that's the one sentence that Christians try to use to say that, hey, Tacitus, wrote about Jesus. Now, Annals comes out in 116, 116 CE. So, and Tacitus wasn't born until 57. So already, like, he was born over 2 decades after the supposed time of Jesus and stuff. So Tacitus and Josephus, they weren't contemporaries. Now, you wouldn't start off a paragraph talking about something in particular, and then in the middle of that paragraph or one sentence reference something totally different from what you're talking about in your paragraph for one sentence, and then at the conclusion of that sentence go resume talking about what you were originally talking about in that paragraph. No one would do that. That wouldn't make sense. And especially not Tacitus. Tacitus was a very educated man. He was a Roman senator. He was also an attorney, and he was extremely educated. And for those reasons, that's why he was considered as a great historian. So Tacitus wouldn't do that. He wouldn't write like that. Now, first off, let's break down the beginning parts of that sentence, and then we're going to break down the end of that sentence, which is the most compelling evidence that Tacitus didn't write that sentence.
Yeah.
Not the entire document, just that sentence. It was added in. So first off, it says Christus. So first off, like, Christ was a title. It wasn't a name. There were multiple people and mythological deities who were referred to as a Christ, as the anointed one and stuff. So saying Christus wouldn't make any sense. That would be like if the state of Texas executed me, and then a journalist later on went to the writings about my execution, and then that would be like if you said, on what's the date? What's the date?
April 11th.
Yeah, that would be the same thing if it said on April 11th, the state of Texas executed Mr. That wouldn't make sense. It's a title.
Yeah.
So like Mr. can refer to any male who's who's an adult, which is what Christus was. Christus is a title that could refer to any high priest or anyone who they considered anointed or any other mythological figure. So the Roman governmental archives wouldn't have said Christus. They would just say his name. Moving along, it says Christus suffered the most extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius. First off, what do you mean he suffered the most extreme penalty? That, like, what was the crime? What does that mean? Like,
yeah.
Huh? And then also he said during the reign of Tiberius. Tiberius reigned for over 20 years. So be more specific. This man suffered the most extreme penalty during the reign. Like, when exactly? And then the most compelling piece of evidence outside of us literally seeing the Christian edits onto his document is that when he said he suffered the penalty at the hands of our procurator, Pontius Pilate. Now, if you conduct research, you can see that Judea received their first procurator in 44. Pontius Pilate dies in 39. Now, Pontius Pilate wasn't a procurator at all. Pontius Pilate was a prefect. Now, the Romans switched the regime to procurators because of Pontius Pilate. Pontius Pilate, he was prior military. He was very strict. He ruled with no nonsense. He had a no nonsense mentality. He didn't listen to anyone or anything. It was his way or the highway and stuff. And he wasn't able to be controlled even by the emperor, you know, because he had that, you know, that military mindset, you know, like a Marine and stuff. So they made a switch in the regime. A procreator was a civilian who was in charge of the finances, you know, and some other things. But they wanted civilians in. They didn't want any more military personnel in charge of things, because they couldn't control military personnel as easily as they could with civilians. So insert procreators. That's what a procreator was. Now, again, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about how we know Pontius Pilate was a real person. The Pilate stone that dates back to his life. The Pilate stone has his name and his title on there. Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea. Even the Bible calls him a prefect. You know, the contemporaries who interacted with him and wrote about him calls him a prefect, like Philo that I mentioned earlier when we was talking about Josephus, you know, and multiple other contemporaries, especially when they didn't have procreators during his time of existence. So, you know, the Roman governmental archives wouldn't have made that mistake and called him a procreator. Also, Tacitus himself wouldn't have made that mistake and called him a procreator. And we know this because Tacitus, in annals and in the historicities, he wrote about numerous other procurators and prefects, and every single time he got their job title correct, including the very next prefect who took the office after Pontius Pilate, Marcellus. Tacitus wrote about him, and he wrote about him how, you know, like the Emperor Tiberius, you know, charged him with spreading, you know, some rumors and stuff, and talking down on him, you know, and Tacitus calls him the prefect. You know, Tacitus uses his correct job title. So Tacitus would not have made that mistake. And if he was copying down from the Roman governmental archives, it for certainly wouldn't have made that mistake.
Right.
But you know who would make that mistake? Multiple centuries down the line, a Christian who was, you know, adding that little 1-2 in there to validate their claim, and not fully aware with, you know, a lot of the historical origins and, you know, of things and stuff during that time. They would make that mistake, you know. So here we had some Christians who forgot to dot their I's and cross their T's.
Right.
You know, so like we know that Tacitus didn't write that. Like, it was added into there. Oh yeah, and I just remember it was a church father by the name of Tertullian who wrote in the late 2nd century, early 3rd century. And Tertullian referenced Tacitus' Annals, book 15, and referenced the fire of Rome that Tacitus was talking about. You know, and Tertullian never referenced that sentence that's in there because it wasn't in there yet. So, yeah. So, you know, so it's things like that with Josephus and Tacitus that most people are unaware of, again, because most people are unaware of history. They don't dig into things and study it and stuff. And, you know, especially nowadays, we just live in the internet age, and anybody can put anything on the internet, and people type in a leading question, and then the first AI overview comes up that answers your leading question with a leading answer, the type of answer that you want. And then they just run with that, not actually examining the documents themselves and the historical timeline and framework of different documents and stuff. So,
so any smart apologist or Christian at this point in the conversation be easy. They're going to say things like, well, Paul, you know, they talk about Paul. They say Paul is our, you know, he met Jesus on the road to Damascus, right? Is that right?
No, not Jesus.
No, he didn't.
Paul never met Jesus. They say,
I thought he had like a vision. He had a vision or something, right?
Yeah, he had a vision of Jesus.
According to the tradition, he had a vision about Jesus.
Yeah, he had on the road to Damascus, he had a vision.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, he didn't meet him. He never met Jesus at all. He had that vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus. He was on the way, according to the story, he was on the way to unalive some Christians and stuff. And he had that vision and stuff. And that's when he changed, he had this
Revelation, as they would
yeah,
say.
and stuff,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. And yeah, so he renounced his Jewish, I don't know how to say it, membership or whatever, for lack of a better term. He stopped being a Jew. He became a Christian then, and instead of persecuting and unaliving Christians, he started to go around and start to preach the gospel of Jesus and stuff. So yeah, he had a vision. He never met Jesus at all, according to the story in the Christian tradition.
So let's talk a little bit more about Paul. Because of course the New Testament is a combination of the 4 gospels and his letters. And I'm curious about the evidence for a Paul as well.
The evidence for a Paul is even weaker than the evidence for a Jesus. And you know how the evidence for literal existence of Jesus is extremely weak, and the evidence for the existence of a Paul is even weaker than that. The only thing from this Paul figure that we have is the Bible. There's it should be very alarming that outside of Christianity, no one mentions this Paul figure. No one at all ever writes about meeting this Paul figure in Christianity or out. And you got these Pauline letters. He's supposedly writing these letters to the churches and stuff. First off, what churches? There weren't any churches in the first century. You had Jewish synagogues and temples and stuff, but there weren't any churches. There weren't any Christian churches and stuff in the first century at all. So that's one thing that people never stop to critically think about. And think about it, he's supposedly writing all these letters to the churches. We don't have any responses at all. No responses. Now,
Josephus doesn't even write about Paul, which is crazy.
Josephus never writes about Paul at all. And you know what? Very quickly, that made me remember about something with Josephus as a Jewish historian and stuff. There was another Jewish historian, and according to the story, Jesus spent most of his ministry, most of his time in Galilee.
Right.
There was another Jewish historian by the name of Justice of Tiberias. Justice of Tiberias, who lived in Galilee and wrote about Galilee during the exact time that Jesus was supposedly doing all of this stuff. Josephus mentions him and writes about him and stuff. And actually, when Josephus, well, I'm not going to bring that up, but Justice of Tiberias, again, because Josephus didn't live in the regions and the areas and stuff.
Okay.
Josephus was in Rome, but Justice of Tiberias was in Galilee. He never wrote about any of this. Nothing. And he was in Galilee, the place where Jesus spent most of his life and did most of these things during the exact same time and a little bit after. And he wrote things. And Justice of Tiberias never mentioned any of this stuff. But when you just said that, it made me think about him. But back to Paul.
Right. Back to Paul.
So yeah, now Josephus never mentions Paul. No one ever mentions Paul at all until the 2nd century in 144. That's the first mention of Paul by a guy named Marcion of Sinope. He came from Sinope, which is in Asia Minor, which is the area that we refer to as Turkey today. In 144, Marcion wrote a series of about 10 letters that was called the Evangelicon. I'm sorry, the Apostolicon.
Apostolicon.
Yeah, and it was a series of 10 letters that was written by a guy named Paul. And that's the first mention of these things, of this person and these letters right there in 144. No one ever mentions this figure. No one at all ever writes about or mentions meeting this person or nothing. You know, it's mighty strange how, okay, so yeah, we got him having his vision and stuff on the road to Damascus and stuff. And once he starts preaching the gospel, he's accused of blasphemy and he's sent to trial in Acts. He's sent to trial, and the prosecutor, there's, you know, or the judge, I'm forgetting which one he was. I think, well, I'm gonna say the prosecutor, because this guy, he was a prosecutor by the name of Gallio. Gallio was the prosecutor who resided over this trial with Paul. He's the one who dismissed the charges and everything, you know, because he was accused of blasphemy and, you know, preaching this stuff. And I find it mighty odd that Gallio, because he was a real person, we have some writing. Gallio wrote some things, and Acts says that, hey, this was a huge trial. You know, Gallio never. This was supposedly the most important or largest, you know, court case of his career, and he never mentions these things. And specifically, Gallio wrote a little bit, but someone who wrote a lot was his brother Seneca. And Seneca was a philosopher, and he wrote a lot. And Seneca was very close with his brother Gallio. And he mentioned him often in a lot of his works. And not only did Gallio mention anything about this Paul figure and this supposed trial that he resided over and dismissed and stuff, Seneca never mentioned any of this stuff at all. And I find it very alarming that, you know, they wouldn't mention this. This was like of uber importance for them to document. And yeah,
so
I'm sorry.
You know, you and I have spoken about this in the past, but when the layman looks up Paul, the earliest thing about Paul is going to pull up is Clement of Rome. Talk to the people about Clement, the letter from Clement of Rome that they're saying is our earliest reference to this Paul figure.
And then also, and one thing I'm just remembering with the Paul stuff, like Paul supposedly says that, you know, he said that Jesus appeared to the 12 disciples, you know, after the resurrection. And it's mighty strange because according to the Bible, there wasn't 12 disciples anymore. Judas, who was a disciple, had betrayed Jesus, and he was no longer one of the 12. So,
wow,
you see what I'm saying? So it's a lot of areas in the story where, you know, when they were editing things and trying to fix, you know, things here and there, it's certain things that they forgot to fix. Where you know, so nowadays people that's coming in and taking a deep dive of the text and stuff, and we're finding mistakes like that. You know, that shows, you know, that just adds fuel to the fire of it being, you know, inauthentic. But so there was so when people, you know, again, they'll run to Google and, you know, it'll say, hey, Clement of Rome mentions Paul, you know, in the 90s. So now this is very important. So now and they'll try to use that, like that's literally their only leg to say that, hey, yeah, Paul, you know, was real. Now, the first mention, not the first mention, the mention of Clement of Rome, you know, mentioning Paul and stuff, and the dating of Clement of Rome comes from none other than Eusebius in the 4th century. Now, first off, they're referencing, they're talking about First Clement in the Bible. So first off, nowhere in the book does nowhere in the book does it says Clement. Nowhere does it mention Clement. It's like it was an anonymous letter that was written, and then Eusebius stamped Clement on it.
Wow.
So now Clement of Rome. Now, the only black and white mention of Clement of Rome that we have comes from a document that's called the Shepherd of Hermes. Now, this is going to catch Eusebius up in his lie that he crafted. So I mentioned this earlier. So it's Christian tradition that they say that they were being persecuted during the reign of Domitian, and Domitian reigned in the 90s, and so that's why they say that they were persecuted in the 90s and stuff. Now, in the letter, it's one sentence literally in there that says these recent transgressions that has been bestowed upon us, and Eusebius used that to say that, hey, Clement of Rome was in the 90s, and he was referring to the Christian persecution, in the 90s, and he uses that to say that, hey, he wrote this in the 90s. Now it's no evidence of that at all. It's just church tradition. Now there's a document that's called the Marcion canon, and the Marcion canon was discovered in the late 2nd century, and it is pretty much a document that gives us the dating range of some of the books that had been created and canonized into the text. Now, the Marcion canon lists a document that's called the Shepherd of Hermes, that was written during the time of his brother Pope Pius. Now, the Shepherd of Hermes originally, was included into the New Text and stuff, but later on, when they were taking different books out and putting different books in, they didn't include the Shepherd of Hermes into the current version of the Bible that we have. Like in the Catholic Bible, it's in there, because the Catholic Bible, they have all of the books. So Pope Pius, which was Hermes' brother, Pope Pius was the Pope during the 150s. Now, Hermes was Pope Pius' brother, and he was a servant. Now, in the Shepherd of Hermes, it lists Clement of Rome. It says that Clement of Rome was tasked with passing out some Bibles and stuff to the churches. So, if the Shepherd of Hermes says that Clement of Rome was tasked with passing out some Bibles and stuff to the churches, and the Shepherd of Hermes was written sometime in the late 140s to 150s, then Clement of Rome couldn't have existed in the 1st century, because according to Eusebius, he dies in 96. Like, how, Sway? Make it make sense.
Yeah.
So it's just another fabricated lie that Eusebius crafted, in the 4th century to try to, piece together the story, the narrative and stuff. So first off, just to summarize it, First Clement, it was an anonymous letter that was attributed to Clement of Rome by Eusebius, and then Eusebius, the life and date range, like nobody has the exact life and date ranges for Clement of Rome, but Eusebius is the one who stamped the dates onto him and that letter, and him writing that letter. And Eusebius says that he died around 96. but he couldn't have if the shepherd of Hermes mentions him in the text, says that he's tasked with passing out some Bibles to the church. And according to the Morturian canon, some people say the Morturian fragment, it lists the canonized books, and it was discovered in the late 2nd century. It lists the canonized books and the date range of them. And it places the Shepherd of Hermes in the mid 2nd century, around the late 140s to 150s. So no, like it's just another lie.
So earlier you mentioned the Apostolicon and Marcion in the middle of the 2nd century is when we get 10 letters attributed to this Paul character.
Yep.
So if we're keeping track, Josephus, we're throwing out Josephus, we're throwing out Tacitus. Not only did Paul not meet Jesus, but there is no actual evidence for a Paul. On top of all of that, our first publishing of any letters attributed to this guy comes in the middle of the 2nd century. So, Beezy, I want you to talk a little bit about Marcion, the Apostolicon, and when we first start to see these the Christian New Testament, as they call it.
Yeah. So Marcion was a very wealthy man from Sinope, Asia Minor, which again that's the area that we refer to as Turkey, and that reason and stuff today. Now, according to there's numerous different church fathers and stuff that said this, but like I'll just throw one out there. Like Plutarch wrote that Serapis Christus, that statue was first built in Sinope before it was taken to Alexandria, Egypt in 325 BCE. I'm not sure if you've made videos already, explaining, going over Serapis and stuff.
No, not yet. We getting there. Not yet though.
Oh, okay. So, well, we got to bring this up when we talk about.
Yeah, we do. So this is everybody's intro into the history. That's why I wanted to get you on here first before I started, unpacking all of this. This is the first intro to historicity on the Black Atheist Ranch channel. So they don't know nothing about none of that yet. I mean, some people do, but I haven't officially made a video about Serapis and Jesus and all that like this. So this is the first style of that we're doing.
And and again with this and stuff, I love it, and I mentioned this to you and stuff, and I love what you're doing and stuff, and it's making me go back out there and start to go harder with trying to put out this stuff too, because I was about to really just like I'm family man now. I'm about to fall back and just focus.
That's right.
Like you breathing some new life into me, bro. And it's very important, like with us, because like we talk about this often, but I just want to say it on here so it could be on record and stuff. Because like you and I, like y'all familiar with him already, and y'all see me, and y'all see how I look, and him and I, like we still, we in the culture, we still look the part, we still talk the part and stuff, and we still intertwine in the culture and stuff. And so like, like more Black people are going to hear our message and stuff, and we're more we're more relatable to them because we're all in the same culture and stuff,
right?
Versus them just listening to some boring white men that's old and might throw some corny jokes in here and there, and they're just boring, and they just and this and this and A, B, C, and they'll talk like that. And it's boring stuff. Don't nobody want to hear that. And like, no, so yeah, that's just a huge benefit to this stuff with that, like that I love, and like you actually brought that up, and made me realize that. And so anywho, but like I ain't gonna go too deep into Serapis. I'm just give a small cliff note version of him and stuff, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna make some videos diving deep into him and stuff. So like, so pretty much in oh crap, oh.
Well, while Be Easy's fixing this thing, y'all make sure. Let me get on the big screen. Well, Be Easy's back now, but yeah, make this little break. Make sure y'all hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, leave a live. All the links are in the description. Leave a super chat, do all the stuff. Yeah.
Man, see, that's why I don't click. That's why I don't want to click any buttons and stuff, man.
Yeah.
Stuff. And like, cause I just did. I clicked the button and it threw the whole stream. I was like, oh snap. So anyway, so to make a long story short, and I know he gonna.
Somebody said Satan.
Hey,
it's the work of the devil,
Satan
right
at work,
there.
you know,
to get out.
Satan don't want the truth to get out. But like, so to make a long story short, like, you know, in Egypt, you know, that's a Greek word. You know, the Greeks changed the name to Egypt. Pyramids, hieroglyphs, all of those are Greek words and stuff. You know, so the Greeks, they were invaders. You know, they had first been going over to Kemet and interacting with those indigenous Black Africans in the region and stuff for a while, and you know they were exchanging things and stuff, ideas and spiritual systems and all of that and stuff. So anywho, at the time, you know, they had a process that was called Christ, where you know, and it's on their temples and stuff, and it was a process that where they would pour oil over most of the time the head of mummies, the you know, the mummies of the kings and stuff, you know, because if I say pharaoh, that's an Egyptian, I mean that's a Greek term, you know, right. So they're kings and stuff. They would pour oil over their kings and their you know, their spiritual teachers and stuff to represent them elevating to their higher state of consciousness, or you know, whatever that means and stuff. I'm just, you know, telling you what was going on with them.
Right.
And that was called Christ, KST, all right, because you know they didn't use vowels in their language, so Christ. And then now the Greeks, you know, got word of that and stuff, and they started referring to that as Christ, you know, which means the anointed one, you know, and when Alexander the Greek, you know, he told them that, hey, I'll help y'all defeat the Persians and get them off your back. And he did so. And then right after that, he surprised attacked them, and, you know, and he took over the region and stuff. And when he was unalived, his brother and the general in his army, Ptolemy the First, took over. He was his half brother. This is his brother, man. I don't like using that. So Ptolemy took over, and Ptolemy the First, you know, his nickname was, you know, was Crestus.
Oh,
that was one of the nicknames as well. But the anointed, and he brought Serapis Christus. His nickname was Christus. He brought Serapis Christus, which was a statue of his image, from Sinope. Again, he brought it down there, and you know, it was Greek and Roman culture that they didn't care who you worshiped or what you worshiped, but when you were under their rulership, you had to worship a statue of whoever was in charge. And this statue called Serapis Christus, which was a statue of the image of Ptolemy the First. Excuse me. He brought that down, and he was forcing them to worship this statue. And now the indigenous Africans in the region, they weren't worshiping it at first. They knew, hey, you only here by force and you don't belong here. And
Right.
so no, they wasn't going for it. And so what did he do? What they all do. He got his army to start slaughtering them until they, agreed to what he wanted. And some of the spiritual high priests and teachers and stuff, there agreed to consecrate him, which means just agree. They agreed to tell the people that, hey, like he's actually, he's actually elevated. He reached his higher state of consciousness and stuff. He's in the church. You need to be worshiping in this and stuff. They only agreed to do that to so that he could stop the genocide and stop slaughtering people and stuff. And so remember, this statue was called Serapis Christus. And that term Christus, there's a Greek word that comes from Christ, and the English version of that word is Christ, and it just means the anointed one. That process, they poured the oil to represent anointing. And the forced worshipers of that statue were called, in our terminology, Christians, and are bishops of Christ.
Right.
And actually, y'all can look up, it was a Roman emperor by the name of Hadrian in the 2nd century, located in a book called The Life of the 12 Caesars. In the 2nd century, he wrote to his brother-in-law, and he was informing him of some different things that was going on, in the region and in Egypt, because during this time the Romans had control of Egypt. They took it from the Greeks, and he told him about the worshipers of Serapis Christos, because he was telling them about conflicts and stuff that was going on in Alexandria, because it was a lot of conflict and turmoil and stuff, because the Romans were bleeding stuff dry and they were taxing people too much and stuff. But he told them that the worshipers of Serapis Christos were Christians and bishops of Christ. And this was in the 2nd century. And he was informing his brother-in-law of this stuff because, just in case something happened to him and his brother-in-law was going to become the emperor, he wanted him to be aware of stuff. So it was just that's just some little side names and references and stuff, so for y'all can look up and validate this stuff. Because again, I don't want y'all to take my words or Bar's words, as just our words. I want y'all to actually go look at some of this stuff and actually try to prove us wrong. That's how confident I am in both of the things that both of us say, because we dive into this. But anywho, so this was in 325 BCE where he took that statue and stuff there. Now, again, I don't, like y'all remember, like Plutarch and some other church fathers in the 2nd and 3rd century wrote that this statue was in Sinope first before he took it to Alexandria, Egypt, because Sinope in Asia Minor and that region and stuff, the Romans had control of that region as well. Like the Roman Empire was large, during this time. Like they were the most powerful army and stuff, and they took over a lot of areas. So, in the 2nd century, we have like in the later parts of the 1st century and into the 2nd century, the Romans were at odds with the Jewish zealots of the region. The Romans and the Jews, like they were continuing to clash and stuff. And the Jews were continuing to revolt against the Romans. They wouldn't pay the taxes. They wouldn't worship statues and other images of Roman officials and stuff, because they only worship through their text of their Pentateuch, Torah. The Pentateuch is another name for the Torah. And so the Second Temple had already been destroyed in 70, and in the 130s there was a revolt called the Bar Kokhba revolt, and it was the Jews' most successful revolt against the Romans. A lot of people were unalived, villages destroyed and stuff, and the Romans were trying to settle this and stuff, and they brought. And this guy by the name of Marcion, he came down from Sinope to try to help them, you know, because knowing that the Jews only worshiped through their text and followed the lead of their text. So they knew that, you know, they had to create some things in text and get them to believe in it and stuff so that they can follow this stuff. So he came down and he started helping to create some things in text. And this is where you see Mark start to pop up, you know, and when the average person look up the oldest gospel, you know, they're going to say the oldest gospel written was Mark.
Right.
And well, the earliest gospel, I mean, not the oldest. Well, I guess that can mean the same thing. They're going to say Mark is the first one. And they're going to say Mark is the first one because they're going to say Mark was written in 70 because it mentions the destruction of the temple. And they know that they're trying to put it as close as possible to the first century. And they know that because it mentions the destruction of the temple, they can at least say it's in 70 because of that, you know. So just because it mentions the destruction of the temple doesn't mean that it's written in 70. Now, Mark, so that's the earliest that they say it can be written. But Mark also uses something from Josephus's autobiography, and that comes out in 99. So that off the rip pushes it to the 2nd century. Most people don't know that, but it does. So if Josephus' autobiography comes out in 99 and it uses information from Josephus' autobiography and pushes it to the 2nd century off the rip. Now, Marcion comes in and, you know, helps them, you know, start to do these things. Now, Marcion is from Sinope, where Serapis Christus, that statue, first was incited. Now, Marcion actually believed in 2 gods. Marcion believed in Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, of course. And being from the area where Serapis Christus was first built, you know, it had already been there for multiple centuries, you know, before Marcion was born. So he was born into it. He was also a worshiper and a believer in Serapis Christus. He didn't call it that. He called it the unknown God and the Father. Now, Marcion believed that Yahweh of the Old Testament was too strict. He was unjust, unfair, you know, and he believed that, you know, the Jews and others needed to be saved, you know, from this unjust God of the Old Testament. And, you know, he said that Jesus was the son of the Father. And for anyone listening, I don't know if you know, I know when they scroll on TikTok and stuff, you always see mentions of Jesus, like, hey, is Jesus the Father? Is he the son of the Father and stuff? Like Marcion calls this unknown God and the Father, which was Serapis. And he says that Jesus was the son of the Father. And Jesus came down, you know, and he ascended from the clouds, from heaven, and he came down first to Capernaum. That was his first stop. And he was crafting this stuff, you know, with the Romans when he first came down. Now, because of this theology, this stuff that Marcion believed, you know, about the Old Testament was too strict and stuff, he started to clash with a lot of Jews and some Roman spiritualists and stuff in the region. He started to clash with them, and they got in conflict. And so eventually, you know, he was a rich man and he made a large donation to the church. And eventually they got enough of him and they gave him his money back and sent him packing back up to Sinope. Now, before he left, Marcion, he left him with a huge fuck you, pretty much. He wrote 2 documents that's called Evangelion and the Epistolicon. And one was what we refer to as Luke and Acts, and the other is the Pauline epistles, the Pauline letters. Now, the that's why the Pauline letters pretty much contradicts pretty much the whole New Testament.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, because Marcion believed that all that stuff was too cruel and that God was too cruel and stuff. And those Pauline letters say that, hey, I got this vision from Jesus, and hey, Jesus instead wants us to go against everything that, Yahweh is saying in the Old Testament, and that originally Jesus came down to double down on, saying that, hey, you should be following all of the old laws and stuff. But now, all of a sudden, this Paul figure got this vision of Jesus, and Jesus told him that, hey, actually, now you shouldn't do all these things. You should, I ain't gonna go into it, but y'all know how the Pauline letters in the Bible pretty much contradicts all of the whole New Testament. I mean, the whole Old Testament, pretty much. And that's why.
Because Paul's letters makes it more like for Gentiles.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you got Luke. You got Luke that comes after Acts. I mean, Luke that comes after Mark, and Luke is pretty much a playwright version of Evangelion. And Acts as well. Acts is the thing that pretty much introduces this Paul figure that, his name was Saul at first, according to the text.
Yeah.
But let me plug my light up. So come back on. Just went there.
You gotta give me one of them things. Every time you do that, I be saying I need to give me one of them things.
Yeah, hey, this is a game changer, because I used to have the big circle one that it was massive, and this little.
That's what I got. That big
one,
damn. I like that way better than this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this, it gets, when you have on glasses, the ring, it shows up in your glasses. But that right there, I need to give me one of them.
Yeah. So pretty much Marcion. So in 144, that's the first time that we get the New Testament canon, in 144 from Marcion. And also, ironically, that's the very first time that we start getting church fathers, and that's the very first time that we get any specific writings and stuff from church fathers. The first church father that we have specific writings from and stuff is, his name is Justin Martyr, who wrote in the 150s and stuff. So like, supposedly some church fathers who was supposed to exist and write things and stuff before Marcion, they didn't. Like, we get that information again from the admitted liar,
Eusebius, right?
Yeah, like, Clement of Rome, that you got that one anonymous letter that's attributed to him from Eusebius, and we just went over there earlier. You got Polycarp, and you got Ignatius. Eusebius gives the wrong date for them, and we can get into them as well, but like they're later 2nd century after Marcion. And like I alluded to this earlier, and it also should be a huge red flag to you that all of these quote unquote church fathers in the 2nd century, they all were converts. None of them were born into it. They all were converts, because that's when it was being created, and they transitioned, to it and stuff while they were creating the story, and to put the lie out there. The first one that was born into it was Origen, in the 3rd century, and of course, it was already up and running.
Yeah, by that time it was
yeah. So, oh man, it's a tangled web we weave. So, I mean, that, like, with this Jesus character, bro, there we have people like Philo, I've already mentioned. Justice of Tiberius. We got Plutarch, Seneca. We got we got off the top of my head, we have so many other people that existed and they wrote about the region in the first century, and none of them wrote about Jesus. And it's another figure, you know, like some people bring up Pliny the Younger and they don't know anything about him and stuff. And, you know, again, every time somebody says Pliny the Younger, it makes me think about his uncle, Pliny the Elder. And Pliny the Elder was a member of the Roman government. He was a senator. And he comes out with a book in 70 CE. And the title of that book in our terminology is Natural Histories. Y'all can look this up. And, you know, it's also available on Internet Archives. Natural Histories. That's the title of it in our language. You know, I always butcher the Greek way of saying it. That's why I just say the English version of it. And so here we have a very important guy, you know, quote unquote important guy. You know, he's in a position of power and stuff. And he comes out with a book in 70 to describe the history of the region and stuff. And, you know, come on now, y'all know where I'm going with it. There's nothing in there about this Jesus figure or Paul or anything that the New Testament claims. Nothing.
Like the earthquakes, people rising from out their graves.
Yeah.
None of that.
Bruh, like, yeah, in the book of Matthew, I think it's Matthew 23, that, yeah, if it literally says that people, saints, that had been dead, rose up out of their tombs and started walking around Jerusalem and interacting with people. Bruh, if literal zombies had started walking around, that would still be the most talked about event till this day. Still be talking, still be talking about it, but nobody mentions this. Like it's stuff, you know, it's a lot of stuff like that, you know, people don't stop to connect the dots and really think about. You know, a lot of people are even unaware of asking these questions, you know, and it's just, we just, you know,
I mean, somebody somewhere should have mentioned a guy feeding thousands, turning water into wine, walking on water. Like somebody somewhere should have mentioned this stuff, especially when you consider things like you brought up how Josephus wrote about Hercules. You mean to tell me he wrote about Hercules and not the guy walking on literal water?
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah, people, he wrote about Hercules. He said Hercules was he fought alongside the sons of Abraham in battle and stuff.
Yeah.
It's
because, you know, BZ, I'm thinking about it. My thing is this. Let's say, no, we're not going to say it, but I'm going to say this. If Josephus would have wrote about Jesus the Christ from Nazareth, why didn't he mention all of the miraculous? I mean, the guy who did all of these amazing things only gets a little slither out the book.
3-4 sentences. When Josephus wrote Josephus wrote multiple paragraphs.
Because I have Antiquities of the Jews. I have it, and I'm like, man, the volumes on volumes on volumes of literature and writing, and Jesus Christ gets a little footnote.
Yeah,
that's crazy to me.
Like I'm gonna tell you, like with Josephus' works, Wars of the Jews, Antiquities of the Jews, and his autobiography. So Marcion and some others, they utilized a lot of his writings and stuff. They used it as a guide to craft the stories and stuff and some of the narratives. Like, check this out. Like in Mark, I'm forgetting the exact what do you call it, chapter and verse and
chapter
stuff. But when I describe it, some people are probably gonna already know where it is, or you just look, describe the story, it'll bring it up. But in Mark, where it talks about the guy that found Jesus's body and buried him and stuff, so not like in Josephus's autobiography, he talks about, because he fought alongside he fought with the Romans in the wars of the late 60s and early 70s and stuff. And during the destruction of the temple and stuff, he was there and he fought with the Romans and stuff. And during that time, Titus Flavian was the emperor.
Right.
In his autobiography, he wrote about a time where he was walking and he saw 3 of his friends hanging on crucifixion crosses, because that was a common unaliving method that the Romans used, especially to people that was accused of blasphemy. They would, they would nail them to the cross. So he was walking and he saw his friends hanging up there, and he asked Titus if he could take his friend down. And of course Titus agreed. Hey, he's like, yeah, Joseph, yeah, you could take your homeboy down. Yeah, you with us.
One of us now.
So, yeah, you one of us. So hey, yeah, if you want to look out for your homeboy, yeah, I'm gonna look out for you. And yeah. So Josephus did this, and he took him down, and his friend died, and he buried him. So now, if you go to Mark, first off, before I go to Mark, if you just, Josephus's Aramaic name is Joseph. They would say Joseph, but it's Joseph, And if you look up Josephus's father's name, his father's name is Matthias or Matthias. Some people pronounce it differently. Tomato. Now, remember at the beginning of the video, we was talking about how, people didn't have last names. They would just say Easy of Houston, Bar of Memphis, of Tennessee, whatever. So in Mark, you got, when Jesus was hanging on the cross, we have this person who found him. His name was Joseph of Arimathea. Now, if you just look this up, there is no place called Mathea or Arimathea. Never was back then, and it still isn't now. You just look this up. There is no Arimathea. But remember, Joseph of Arimathea, remember, Josephus' Aramaic name is Joseph, and his father's name is Matthias or Matthias. So what they did is they took that story that Josephus wrote, talked about, that he experienced and did and stuff. So they took that story and that event and placed it on to, this character, and took his Aramaic name and combined it with his father's name, to create a fictional person who took down the fictional character's body from the cross and stuff and buried him and stuff. I mean, that's just an example of, how they use some of his works to create their narrative and stuff. And that's an example to show you that the Gospel of Mark wasn't written in the 1st century, because Josephus' autobiography didn't come out until 99, and they used stuff from his autobiography. So, nah, bro.
I had just looked at it. I just pulled it. Yeah, that's Mark 15, verses 42 through, it's like 42 through 47. Yeah, it's the end of the thing. Yeah.
So
this resembles what's in Josephus's autobiography that comes out in 90. Is that what
not 90?
No, 90.
It's 99,
not
right?
When did you say Josephus's biography came out?
99. Somewhere in the late 90s, I think. Yeah, it's 99, I think.
So how could a God,
Antiquities of the Jews comes out in like 93. Which one is it? The you said the one. If I write about my own life, is it a biography or autobiography? I'm tripping.
It's autobiography. If you write about yourself, it's auto.
Yeah. So okay. So his autobiography comes out after Antiquities of the Jews. That's the last thing that comes out. It comes out in 99.
Yeah, because Antiquities of the Jews comes out like 93, 94.
Yeah, 93. Yeah.
So to the people watching, you just got to think for yourself. How can these gospels be dated to 60 and 70 if they have material in it that comes out of Wars of the Jews, Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus' autobiography? All of these are literally the freaking 90s CE. You mean, like, there's no way they would have dated to prior to these works. So off the rip, we're dealing with 2nd century literature that's not contemporary to a Jesus, not even close to contemporary to a Jesus. Nobody mentions these gospels. These gospels, they don't get named until Irenaeus in like the 180s, right? Be easy.
80, yep, 180.
So it's like
against heresies.
We're dealing with inauthentic, plagiarized, interpolated, forged. They're pulling from Josephus. They're anonymous. They're not contemporary. There is not a scholar on this earth. There's not a Bible historian. Nobody. They will tell you this is anonymous. They don't know who wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not when you look at it critically, when you hold it up to scrutiny, they do not date to the time ranges that the scholarly consensus is given. It does not date to no 60s and no 70s.
No,
it has to come out later. They don't get named till 180. That's literally almost the freaking 3rd century.
Mm-hmm. Cause check this out now. So you got, I told y'all, because Marcion pretty much wrote Luke and Acts, and now specifically with Luke, like the beginning and a small portion of the end of Luke, it doesn't fit and match with, most of Luke, pretty much Luke 4 through 22. And the reason for that is Marcion pretty much, wrote Luke and stuff. And later on, some of the church fathers, that had a hand in, continuing to put this stuff together and edit it and stuff, added stuff to it and stuff. And like Irenaeus, the one that you were just talking about, Irenaeus added some stuff to the Gospel of Luke. Now, so like, for example, like in the beginning of Luke and Acts, he added the beginning of Acts as well. Like in the beginning of Luke and Acts, it's addressed to Theophilus, so that he would, it literally says that, hey, I'm writing to you, my most excellent Theophilus, so that you may be aware of the things that are going on and stuff in the beginning of Luke and Acts.
Yeah.
If you look up Theophilus, there was, now remember, Luke never met Jesus, and Luke was supposedly a traveling companion of Paul, the physician of Paul and stuff. So, and then they, Paul had this vision and stuff, and then he did a 180. He renounced being a Jew and stuff, and turned into a Christian and started, spreading the gospel and doing all these wonderful things and stuff. So now there's only 2 Theophilus. There's one Theophilus in the 1st century. He was a Jewish leader in the temple. I'm forgetting his full name is Theophilus.
Is it Theophilus of
Benanias or something? It's Theophilus something. Josephus wrote about him. And the only other Theophilus was Theophilus, the bishop of Antioch, who ruled. He was the bishop of Antioch from 169 to 182.
Yeah. Right
there when Irenaeus wrote against heresies in 180. Mm-hmm. Now, in Luke, again, Luke is a traveling companion of Paul, so they're all together, and so that now they're supposedly they're Christians and stuff now. So now as a Christian and stuff, and they're persecuting Jews. They're not a Jew anymore, and they're persecuting Jews and stuff. So in Luke wouldn't be writing stuff to a Jewish priest so that he would be aware of the things that is happening, as the beginning of Luke says. But
because he's a Christian, right?
Yeah, he's a Christian. But
a Christian wouldn't be. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, a Christian wouldn't be writing to a Jewish priest. No.
So there's no way he's talking about the Theophilus from the 1st century.
Yeah, he's
that doesn't make sense.
Nope. But Theophilus, who was the bishop of Antioch in the late 2nd century, from 169 to 182, he, in Antioch, and this Theophilus again comes from. They all come from Sinope, that region, and Theophilus, the bishop of Antioch, was a Christian convert. He converted to Christianity in like the late 150s, early 160s, around that date range. Now, it would make sense for Irenaeus to address, the Gospel of Luke and stuff to Theophilus, the bishop of Antioch, so that he would be made aware of the things that's going on and what they're doing. That makes a world of sense.
Wow.
To me, it's just, you got, and Acts as well. It says the same thing in the beginning of Acts. Writing this, my most excellent Theophilus, so that you'll be made aware of these things that's going on in the beginning of Acts as well. So you got, I think Irenaeus, wrote those things in the beginning of Luke and Acts, and, addressing it to Theophilus, who's now the bishop of Antioch. And again, he was a Christian convert in the late 150s to 160s. That makes sense that Irenaeus would be
Hold on, it be easy. It cut out on my end. It cut out on my end a little bit. I just missed the last 30 seconds of what you just said. The last thing I heard.
Saying, I was just doubling back on it. I was just saying, yeah, it would make sense for him to, for Irenaeus to address, to write the beginnings of Luke and Acts and address those things to Theophilus, the bishop of Antioch, who was a convert to the religion in the late 150s to 160s, so that he could be made aware of the stuff that's going on, what they've been doing. That makes a world of sense. And again, O most excellent Theophilus, that's what they refer to the bishops as. No Jews refer to their teachers and now rabbis and stuff. They don't refer to them as most excellent. Nah. So it's a lot of things that that points to this stuff. So like you got, so later on, so Tertullian in the late 2nd century and early 3rd century, and Irenaeus wrote this as well. They wrote that you have the Marcionites, who were like the later followers of the Marcion doctrine and stuff, which is the pretty much now the first New Testament canon. They wrote that you had the Marcionites saying that the now Christians took their gospel and twisted it around to create their narrative and stuff. And then you had the Christians who said, now the Marcionites took the the biblical New Testament accounts and stuff and remixed it to create their gospel. And later on, the past couple of centuries and stuff, you had they were continuously going in to fix stuff, edit stuff, take stuff in, add stuff in and stuff, take stuff out and stuff, and they left small mistakes in there that will allow us to answer some questions and see some things. And they left a crucial mistake in there that will allow us to see that the Christians took the Marcionite gospel and remixed it, not the other way around. Because in Luke, remember I told you earlier, like Marcion wrote that Jesus, there was no birth narrative and stuff. That was late. That was added in later on. Marcion wrote that Jesus ascended down from the heavens. He was the son of the Father, the unknown God, and he ascended down from the heavens into Capernaum. That was his first stop. Now, in Luke 4:21, I think, when Jesus went to Jerusalem, and yeah, if you pull this up, or I think you can pull stuff up. Jesus went to Jerusalem, and they asked Jesus if he could perform miracles on people there like he did in Capernaum.
Yeah.
I think that's Luke 4:21.
That's right. It's a little bit down, but it's that's right. If I could show my screen, hold up. Yeah. It's right here.
Yeah, right there. He said to them, doubtless you will quote to me this proverb, Doctor, cure yourself and you all that. Yeah, do here also in your hometown the things that we have heard you did at Capernaum. Yeah. You know what the huge problem is what that is? Go to 31.
Verse 31.
Yeah, verse 31. That's
right
when
here.
Jesus first goes to Capernaum. Yeah, you see it right there. Yeah. He first went to Capernaum in 31. So they forgot to edit that right there. How could they be asking him to perform miracles there like he did in Capernaum when he hadn't been there yet? So that shows you how like the Christians took the Marcionite doctrine and edited and stuff, for their narrative. And the Marcionite doctrine doesn't come out until 144. So man, so no, like there was no Jesus, there was no Paul, none of these, most of the characters, well, in the whole Bible, but since we're talking about Jesus and stuff in the New Testament, most of the characters in the Bible, in the New Testament, did not really exist, and most of the events in the New Testament did not really happen. I only say most of the characters in the New Testament didn't exist because that's excluding Pontius Pilate. Evidence points to, he really existed. Outside of him, nah.
Yeah.
Like, and again, all of this stuff happened in that region and stuff, and was intended to people in that region and stuff. Black people, you're only Christian because this was beat into our ancestors during the slave trade. Like this is not for you. This is let me stop saying you. This is not for us. I'm saying you, right. Like I'm not black. In my mind, I kept saying you because I'm not a believer in it and stuff. I'm not a Christian.
Yeah. I feel it. I feel that.
This is not for us. I only come to two conclusions based on Leviticus 25 verses 44 through 46, where the God of the Bible, literally told his people that they can buy foreigners and make them their property and enslave them for life and pass them down as inheritance to their offspring. That's literally the definition of chattel slavery and what happened in chattel slavery. So, I'll say that, hey, either, those people that came in, and enslaved us and stuff, they were either following the directions of that God of the Bible, and or they created that God of the Bible, and had him say those things so that they could justify the things that they were doing to us, and other people. Either or, it's not something that we should be following. Wasn't in Ethiopia first. It was took to
that's where they go.
Yeah, that's where they go. Nah, it was took to Ethiopia in the 4th century from colonizers. So, man, it's a tangle web we weave, man. And it takes a lot of reading and watching things and traveling, and and cross-examining texts and stuff to to see what's what. Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and you're either gonna put in the work to really know what you're talking about, or you're just gonna you know, continue to be ignorant to the historical aspects of your beliefs and stuff and just go by what you're told. You make the decision.
Yeah. I think that's a great note to end off on, big bro. Man, I been trying to get you over here, and I'm glad we was able to, man, just do a whole little run through of it so people can have it over here that they can come back and rewatch it, and you know what I'm saying, look through the Bible, look through Josephus and Tacitus and Eusebius and Pliny, and look through all these different names, look these names up, and so they can understand for themselves that it wasn't no Jesus, it wasn't no Paul, evidence of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? You gotta understand, like, be easy to segue into what I be touching on. Black people should not be Christian. We got this through violence. On top of the people not existing, on top of the stories being fictitious, they forced it on us through colonialism and slavery. And so that's why it's one thing for all these other different groups of people, no harm, no foul, if they believe in Jesus or not. The gods are named, the days of the weeks are named after their gods. The planets are named after their gods. We're living under their rule, by their calendars, in their culture. No harm, no foul. You're not demonized for watching movies about Thor and Loki, the Marvel. You're not demonized for watching movies about the Vikings, TV shows about the Witchers and the things that happen in Europe, European mythology and culture. You're not demonized for that, but African cultures are demonized. We were lied about. They rewrote history. They came up with false narratives. So it is important for us to understand that Jesus Christ wasn't real. And these stories, this Bible is fiction. It's fiction used to control people. It's imperative that we understand that, because this is the religion of our oppressor. I said this, Be Easy was just live right before we started this, and the last thing I said was, this religion is the face, it's the logo, it's the driving factor for white supremacy. So it means a little bit more when you're black with the white Jesus hanging up, and then when you come to find out Jesus wasn't a real person. It's a little bit more to it when it's like that. So it's important for us to wake up, and it's important for us to understand that this person wasn't real. And they try to call it, mythicism, and we don't need a label for it. There was no historical Jesus. It's all fiction. They try to put us in this box of like, oh, it's a small minority group of people who are arguing that Jesus Christ didn't exist, and the scholarly consensus is that they accept that there was at least a God. Show me a black person that believes in just a God. Like Lord will tell you, you don't believe in just some dude named Yeshua walking around first century Galilee and Judea. You believe in a demigod, a demiurge. You believe in a supernatural creature. And that person, the regular Jesus, supernatural Jesus, black Jesus, white Jesus, orange Jesus, all them niggas are made up.
All of them.
Amen.
Yeah, they make up the name and stuff and try to place a negative connotation on it so people can off the rip, not listen to what we're saying and stuff. That's what they always did to everything. Oh, when they're spreading and stuff, they have some non-believers or whatever, or they wanted to get rid of them. Oh, pagan, that's a pagan. Get rid of them. Oh, mythicists, don't listen to them. Get rid of them.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a fringe, a small minority argument. But Be Easy has examined what they because I've read Bart Ehrman's books. I've read a lot of these New Testament scholars, Jesus Christ historian. I've read their works. Their main evidence for Jesus is Paul's letters and the Gospels and Tacitus and Josephus. They're using these sources as their evidence for Jesus, and we just unpack those. What else they got? When you unpack, because everybody bring up these scholars, and then Be Easy's gonna ask you, what is the scholar's evidence? Well, the scholar saying Paul. Who is Paul?
Yeah.
Well, the scholar saying Josephus. Josephus didn't write about Jesus. But the scholar is saying Tacitus, Suetonius. But when you look deeper, this is not evidence for no Jesus. That's why I needed Be Easy to come over here, and I'm glad you did. I'm glad I was able to get you over here in this type of. It's 2 hours and 30 minutes. This is exactly what the people need, so they can come back and put this motherfucker on repeat and keep watching it, keep repeating it. I can't wait to go through this, and I'm gonna start. Be Easy is me introducing y'all to the historicity side of things, but I'm gonna start doing Jesus wasn't a real person too. But I just wanted y'all to be acclimated and caught up to speed, because my inspiration for this is Be Easy. I'm like, before I met, I'm like, damn, you know what I'm saying? I read a couple books, but Be Easy is like day in, day out on this shit. I'm like, damn, I'm feeding off of that knowledge and information that I'm learning from him. I'm taking it, I'm looking it up, fact checking everything, come back green. I'm like, damn, Be Easy, I need to get you over on the channel so I can get the people acclimated. So when I start doing this, they have a reference point. This is the day in history where Be Easy had, Bar had Be Easy over there, and we started going down this tunnel. Yeah, that's why I appreciate you for coming on here, and man, taking time out your day to you know what I'm saying, unpack these things in this like a long length type of style live stream. I appreciate it, bro.
Oh, no problem. It was an honor, a pleasure, man. I had to do it for, I guess I say big bro since you're 54. Huh?
That's right. I'm the big brother. But
man. Yeah, but it's all good, man. I'll be on live. I'll be, man, it never happened, but I'll be wishing that some of those people that, that, hey, got a little skin in the game come up, because, man, I'll dog walk them. Because, like, that's why all of the, people like West Huff and Cliff Knopel, however you say it. All the people like that and stuff. Man, they only talk to people that's also believers, or or someone that they know that don't really know nothing, so they can just hit them with fluff and and start preaching to them and stuff, and they don't really know any historical things about it and stuff. Like they know if they really talk to somebody that know what they're talking about, they'll get dog walked. And so nah. And after you really get into this stuff and really start seeing this stuff, it's really easy. Yeah, man. But yeah, it's all good. All right, we had to. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I'm just sitting there like, man, look, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna put the timestamps on it. So like the people that's coming, they go to the comments and read the timestamps. Just click. Oh, I want to learn about Paul, and click on the part about Paul. That's why I'm glad we broke it into sections like that. I'm gonna put the timestamps on it, like I did my 5-hour live stream. So now I can say, me and Be Easy I'm gonna say 3 hours, even though it's been 2 hours 30 minutes. I'm gonna be like, man, me and Be Easy got a 3-hour live stream talking about Jesus. So you got a 5-hour live stream about
And then look, because let me say this, because I want you to put that in the clip about Paul and stuff, because when you just mentioned him again, it just made me think of something else. Like, according to the story, like Paul traveled from I think it was Arabia, and he returned to Damascus. And like 2 Corinthians mentions that King Aretas had control of Damascus. And so like Paul's conversion would have happened between like 33 to 40 CE, according to the story. Because because it says that he converted like 4 to 7 years after the alleged death of Jesus. So that places it around 33 to 40 CE, somewhere around there. And that just made me think of something else too. So again, 2 Corinthians says that King Aretas had control over Damascus. The huge part with this is that you have King Aretas III. He had control over Damascus, but he died in around, I think, 62 BCE. Now his son, King Aretas IV, he died in 40 CE, but he never had anything to do with Damascus. He never had control of Damascus or nothing related to Damascus. Wow. So it's just another little a little, nugget in there to, to make people, start, seeing that this is a fabricated story. It's made up, you know. And we can end it with this, and like with the date thing and stuff, and it made me think of, the huge how you said contradiction with the with the birth stories and stuff in the gospels and the dates. So you got the Gospel of Matthew saying that Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod, and King Herod was looking for him. He unalive all of the firstborn, all of the sons and stuff. And King Herod died in 4 BCE. So the Gospel of Matthew is claiming that Jesus was born at least in 4 BCE, because that's when King Herod was born. But you got Luke 2 saying that Mary and Joseph were in Jerusalem to register for the census. And this was when Quirinius was governor of Syria. And during this time, this when Mary gave birth to Jesus. Now, if you look up when Quirinius was governor of Syria, he was governor of Syria between the years of 6 and 12 CE. So if we just go with the earliest date, 6 CE. So you have the Gospel of Matthew saying that Jesus was born in at least 4 BCE, and the Gospel of Luke saying that he was born at least in 6 CE. That's a 10-year difference between the two, at least. So how, Sway? Like that's not just a small misstep. That's a 10-year difference.
Yeah.
And then if you go with the Luke one, let's say the Luke one, let's say he was born in 6 CE. And then it says that he started his ministry at 30. So 30 years from 6, that would take us to the year 36 when he started his ministry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to the story, he died when he was 33 years old. It doesn't say specifically he was 33, but it says after his ministry, he participated in 3 Passover festivals. And now the Passover festivals only happen once annually. Passover is once annually. So if he participated in 3 of them after his ministry and then he was killed after that, that means that it was 3 years. He was 33.
Right.
So if Jesus started his ministry in the year 36 and he died 3 years later, that would take us to the year 39. Now, according to the story, he was killed by the orders of Pontius Pilate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the huge issue is that if he was killed in the year 39 at the orders of Pontius Pilate, that's impossible because Pontius Pilate was removed from office in 36. He didn't even live there anymore. He was sent elsewhere on business. Pontius Pilate also dies in 39, but he couldn't have been killed from the orders of Pontius Pilate in the year 39 when Pontius Pilate wasn't even the prefect anymore. So just some more little stuff for him to look into.
Yeah, when you really start to look into these things, of course there's going to be apologetics, but apologetics is just Christians coming up with bad arguments to
to lie for apologetics.
Yeah, it's in the name. They're just apologizing, making shit up.
They literally they know that they make stuff up to defend it and stuff. They know that they have no problem with that. So yeah,
just like Eusebius.
Mm-hmm.
But
just like you said, he was an apologetic. He said it. So hey, but people, hey, Jesus never really existed, man. This stuff is made up. It's all good, man. It's not going. You still gonna have to go to work tomorrow. Still gonna have to pay your light bill. Gas still gonna be high. You still gonna have to pay rent. All that, man. You be all right.
can't wait till more people let go of this Jesus Christ character.
Yeah,
and you know, we start to see more people understanding history and stuff. That's what
and with us, you know, I didn't say this. I got this from I think Queen of Four, a fool. I always butcher her name, but like she said, she's like, hey, you know, this was one of the biggest chess moves on the chessboard, like that they did. So like us black people and stuff, the image of God and Jesus, our savior and stuff, that's gonna save us and stuff, is in the image of a stereotypical white man. So, you know, when we interact with white people, when we think about white people, when we talk, you know, all of that, subconsciously, without us even realizing it, we submit to a level of inferiority to white people because in our mind, they are in the same image as God, as Jesus. So they must be better because we're not in the same image. And if we're suffering from, you know, any oppression at the hands of white people, it must be ordained by God, you know, because they're in the image of God. They look like God, you know. And hey, that's you know, that's real. That's real.
yeah.
That's real.
And what's crazy is you know, I tell people all the time, yeah, God is a white man. It's a dead white man in the sky. That's exactly what God has always been. And so you know, the first step is this: learning that Jesus Christ wasn't a real person. We can really move forward and, you know, have different conversations about who we are, where we come from, and, you know, I don't think black people should be, you know, religious and things of that nature. And this is one of the reasons why, because the person you're worshiping is fictitious. It's created. It's a created creature. And Be Easy just walked you through that. And so, you know, I leave you with just something to think about. Like, man, you know, we have to do this because they're doing it and they're pushing false information and lies. So somebody has to be on here. We have to be on here just as much as the people that are lying to us. Because every time you click on your phone or your TV, there's a motherfucker telling you about Jesus and what he did for you. It need to be a motherfucker like me and Be Easy telling you, hey, no, ain't no Jesus. Never was a Jesus. And so, I'll leave you with that.
Yeah. And real quick, and before we get out of here, bro, and like, cause I just actually clicked on YouTube and went to your page and, you know, this live and stuff, and I see a comment on there. Somebody I don't know, I think it was an earlier comment, but somebody, office manager, said, how's that? Ethiopia was never colonized.
Mm. Yeah.
Man, y'all, Ethiopia was colonized. Now, yeah, Ethiopia wasn't colonized to the extent that the rest of the Western world has been colonized, but
Because of geography. That's the only
because of
reason.
geography, yeah.
But go
Yep.
ahead, Bees.
They were able to hide up on the high mountain ranges and stuff, and they were able to see if anyone's coming and stuff, and yeah, and were able to attack first.
That's why the Arabs didn't get them, because
Yep.
the mountain region, the highlands.
Yep. Yep. But with this stuff, I'm pretty sure he's mentioned this, you know, so many times until he's blue in the face, and I know he's going to continue mentioning it. And again, it's, you know, it's always new people and stuff that don't know this stuff. But like, first off, you know, the religion was brought to Christianity. I mean, the religion was brought to Ethiopia in the 4th century by a man named Fermentus. He was a Phoenician-born man. His parents were Greek. All right, so he didn't look like us. And King Azana, who was the king of the Axum Empire, because it was referred to as Axum at that time. King Azana, you know, and he's seen as a very weak king. and you know, he wanted to align themselves. He wanted to align them with Rome so they can have access to the trade routes and have their military assistance and everything and stuff. He accepted Christianity from Fomentis and abandoned Ethiopia's axiom, their traditional spiritual values and stuff, and made Christianity the official religion of the region. Their Bible, the Ethiopian Bible, the Garima Gospels, it was wrote by Abba Garima, a Roman, the son of a Roman emperor. You know, and to the people that say, hey, you know, the Bible mentions, you know, is mentions Ethiopia. No, it doesn't. You know, it's not talking about the region that we refer to as Ethiopia today.
Right.
First off, it didn't start to be called Ethiopia until like, I don't know, like the 7th, 8th, 9th century, somewhere up in there. But like the word Ethiopia comes from the Greek word Aethiopus, and they you know, they were using that in BCE times and stuff. Just that was the name for people with dark faces. You know, they called anyone that had a burnt face, you know, Aethiopus. And we know the New Testament was originally written in Greek. And that story in Acts, if you go to the translation, you know, originally, you know, because that story when Philip was traveling on the road, and it says now in the English version, it says he encountered an Ethiopian eunuch.
Eunuch, yeah.
Yeah, first off, a eunuch just means castrated, someone who is castrated. So he encountered a castrated man. And the original translation says he encountered an Aethiopus eunuch. So he's just saying he encountered a castrated, dark-faced man.
Yeah.
Now, later on in the English translations, it's the Ethiopian eunuch. It's not referring to the region that we refer to as Ethiopia now. It's just talking about a dark-skinned, castrated man. If it was referring to the now Ethiopia, it would have said that he encountered an Axumite eunuch, a castrated man.
That's the dead giveaway right there as well. Because it wasn't called Ethiopia. It was the kingdom of Axum.
Yep. So
and you know, black people they love to use Ethiopia, but we'll get into it maybe tomorrow or sometime next week when I'm live, and I'll do Black People Should Not Be Christian. They'll come up and say it, and we'll deep dive into it, and you're going to understand that Ethiopia did not create Christianity. The Ethiopian Bible is not the oldest Bible, and they converted for political reasons, and the king converted, and then he imposed it on his kingdom. That's not a sign of revelation or spiritual. That's not holy. That's not spiritual. That's politics. That's propaganda. That's Rome aligning with Roman infrastructure. That's nothing holy about that. But yeah. Well, man, be easy, big bro, little bro. I appreciate you. It was good to hear you. You know, I'm like a sponge when it comes to this. I just sit back and be like, man, I just be listening because it be times where you'll remember something, you're like, oh snap. And then another thing is I'm just like, yeah. So man, I appreciate you for coming over here and kicking shit and you know exposing people to this information, man. I needed it, we needed it, they needed it. It's good. It's great that you were able to come over here and do this. We need more people doing this. Ain't too many of us doing this side of it. We'll debate. We'll debate whether or not God exists, but ain't too many of us on this train right here. Jesus didn't exist and got the receipts to back it up. So this is going to equip a lot of people. It's going to equip me. I'm gonna have my notes together using this, and I appreciate it. Like I tell them, you're a wealth of knowledge, bro.
So man, you are too.
Give you flowers, man.
Yeah, you are as well, and especially you you already, you know, at this level now, you know, in a little bit you're gonna be much better.
It's gonna get dog.
Much more about this stuff than I do. So and I'm all here for it, man. And we need this. Especially Listen, for people like you and I, yeah, it's some that's doing this stuff, but people like you and I, like, you know, we're starting to develop, you know, a larger platform. So we're reaching more people. You know, and your platform is larger than mine. You know, like, yeah, we both got a little large platform on TikTok, but you got a large platform on here. I haven't done anything on YouTube and stuff. So yeah, the people need this. But yeah, man, hey,
I'm gonna try to put them timestamps on it. Maybe tomorrow, because I'm gonna watch it back. I probably watch it back tonight. But I'll try to put them timestamps on it. Man, Be Easy, man. I appreciate you. Yeah, I put the link to Be Easy's TikTok in the description, so you can catch him over there, watch his videos. He be live. You catch him live, so you can sit in on this, because this is his thing. Jesus never existed. God isn't real. That's the topic he usually runs over there on YouTube. So, I mean, on TikTok. So, man, y'all follow Be Easy. You know what I'm saying? If you new, subscribe, follow me. Man, I appreciate y'all. Be Easy, you got something for him before we get out of here?
Oh, man, no doubt. No, man. Hey, just no, I ain't got nothing, man.
About to think of something.
Oh yeah, I gotta think of something, man.
No, we done said it all. Man. But man, I appreciate y'all. Be Easy. I appreciate you, bro. I'm about to play the outro. Y'all subscribe, leave a comment, hit the thumbs up. Hey, this. Oh, shit, I ain't even in the stream like I was supposed to. My bad, y'all. I thought I ended the Nah, but I'm going for real, y'all.